guys, welcome to DevOps Open House 2. This is basically the second edition of our attempt for doing DevOps Open House. And if we can move to the next slide. Yeah, this is our agenda here. We will shortly introduce our mentor for the day today, Prashant. And then he will basically go through little last time's DevOps pipeline overview, followed by Kubernetes in action. Okay, and then we will have the open house. We would like to welcome Prashant Beniwal. Prashant is having 20 plus years of experience and various roles he has played, including dev, support, QA. He is extremely conversant with telecom domain. He is a certified DevOps trainer and coach. He is basically a licensed trainer for CPD Off. He is also certified Azure Fundamental, Azure Administrator, and MCT. He is basically a big AI machine learning enthusiast, very powerful in his overall implementation in the area of microservices using cloud, Docker, and Kubernetes. He has done trainings across India and outside as well. In fact, as a CPD licensed trainer, he would have trained more than 400 people across different centers of MDocs in Cyprus, Ireland, also in Spain, and other places as well. He is a public speaker. He has been a speaker in GTR and DevOps Summit that we organize in other conferences as well. And he is incidentally a visiting faculty at various universities as well. So I think this actually, more than that, he is a very humble person. And I would request Prashant to now make sure that he can actually share his knowledge, which is in abundance, with all of us on the Kubernetes as well. Over to you, Prashant.
Okay. Thanks, Adi, for the introduction. So, guys, again, that was a quick introduction. So, my name is Prashant Beniwal, and I will not again repeat whatever Adi said. So, thanks, Adi, for the nice introduction. So, again, guys, this is a session which, just like last time, we would like to dedicate it more on like showing you something in action rather than presentation. But of course, we have few slides in place so that we can set the context. So we will, if at all you happen to attend the last open house in this series, this is the second one. So it may be a bit of a repetition, but just because we are building the whole story further after the pipeline, so-called DevOps pipeline that we saw in action last time, it's good to quickly see it once. Okay, so in general, as our program of CPD Off, for which we are having this session to kind of tell you about its background. This is a DevOps lifecycle, which we normally try to cover, and various tools. And the key part for our program in general is that we keep it very, very hands-on. Okay, it is industries. One of the, based on the feedback that I receive, and as Adi said, I am associated with DevOps training with multiple platforms and organizations. Of course, one of the key one being ATA and this. So I really love to deliver this training because by far, this is one of the most hands-on training that we run, and with the certification in the end, we start the whole story with the very basics of Git, and then we use GitLab and we use Jenkins for it, and we take a basic Java program. Of course, people have this question that what if a Java developer, I'm not a Java person, which is fine, guys. We are trying to expose you to the DevOps lifecycle. So even though you may not be a Java developer, we don't expect you to kind of understand the code fully, but yes, make it pass through all these various stages of development lifecycle, whether source code management, build, automated unit testing using tools like JUnit. And we just don't cover theory. Okay, we make this pipeline, and we eventually use tools like Ansible and Docker and Nagios. We also show towards the end to monitor. And this is what we covered last time, a quick recap of what we showed in our last open house. And this is a real pipeline which every person who joins the CPDOF certification has to make. So we spend full 3 days understanding all the tools that are mentioned here and trying to cover them with hands-on. Of course, this is 10 plus tools technologies, so it is not easy for us to go into too much details of each of these tools, but what we would like you to experience in these 3 days of training, which normally starts on a Friday afternoon and finishes by Sunday evening. We mostly try to do it 2 to 10 p.m. India time. because we do cover mainly the European zone also, if we have anybody, and sometimes we have seen even enthusiast from US also comes and gets up pretty early in the day. And all in all, this is what a person experiences. So I can show you also something similar that I created today for our demo. So this is a pipeline that you have. It has various stages of, compiling the code, the unit testing, the code coverage using Cobertura, code inspection using PMD. We package also using JFrog Artifactory, and eventually we use a local Tomcat. And so I can just show you also, okay, while we talk, of course, in general, in the class, we trigger the pipeline through some kind of a webhook or something on the GitLab. So the moment something gets pushed, the pipeline gets triggered automatically. So you can experience the complete DevOps, so-called what we call a CI/CD, a continuous integration and a continuous delivery or deployment, whatever you want to call it. Experience it in the first hand. Each participant has a working virtual machine that we provide as part of these sessions, so that you get a full 100% hands-on experience of creating this pipeline yourself. Of course, today's session, we have kept that if we would like to enhance this further, okay, more or less in the class, the hands-on ends on this part. But of course, today's session, we would like to expose you a bit more to one of the industry standard, very popular tool in the industry for container orchestration, which is Kubernetes. So we thought with this background, by the end of the pipeline in our program, we have a Java code which is fully going through this pipeline and getting deployed in Docker containers, and that's the last step. So today, the next 15 minutes or so, post which we will take questions, I will be spending some time on what further, how it can be enhanced, because during the session, as I said, we already have 10 plus tools technologies to cover from the basics. So in that 3 days time, we don't cover Kubernetes much in practical. Okay, of course, we may spend some time on just spending and maybe showing you a demo, but today's piece, we will try to focus a bit more into Kubernetes. So we will kind of run our application that we develop, which is a very simple Java program like a hello world, which we make, which is already created, and we have it in our GitLab repo, which we kind of everybody clones into their account and kind of makes it pass through all these stages. And by the end, we have a war file which is deployed. So basically today for Kubernetes, in general, as Kubernetes is a container orchestration software, we will, as I promised you, we will not cover too much of theory, but at least just to let you know that there are multiple implementations of Kubernetes in market. You can create, it's an open source tool. You can create your own instance of a Kubernetes, make your own cluster, master, and a worker node or whatever. But considering it is slightly complex and very difficult to debug, there are a lot of hosted or what we call managed solutions by various cloud providers, whether the main ones like Azure of Microsoft, or AWS by Amazon, and Google Kubernetes engine, which is by Google, as we know, GKE.
I had a question, if I may.
Yes, please go ahead.
So you will be only touching on Kubernetes, or you will be even trying to talk about Docker Swarm, because I understand that's not picking the market compared to Kubernetes, right?
Yeah, so we will be talking only about Kubernetes. Docker Swarm is another orchestration software, and we have another one by Apache, I think Mesos or something. But by far, Kubernetes is the kind of the leading in the market. So we will be talking purely only about Kubernetes. We will not be comparing it to Docker Swarm or how it is better or something. We will be covering only. And by the way, Kubernetes is a very wide topic. It will be wrong on my part to say that we will be covering Kubernetes, but yeah, we will be touching only Kubernetes because it's a lots of topic, and spending 15-20 minutes, whatever best justice we can do with Kubernetes, we will try to do with, of course, taking our application as the base, because we have to show you a hands-on so that you experience it. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that answers. And okay. You would be also talking about this Ansible integration with Kubernetes for configuration or
No, not here, but of course, during the certification, we surely cover basics of Ansible, and we try to kind of invoke Docker through it, and we try to deploy our application on Tomcat through Ansible. But we would not be talking about Ansible kind of invoking Kubernetes today. Whatever we will show you today is more like we will be showing you commands of Kubernetes, which is called, like basically using kubectl, showing you basic commands and creating a deployment and a replica set and a service, which is external load balancer, just to give you a feel of what Kubernetes looks like. But we are not integrating it with Ansible in this demo.
okay. So
Okay.
Kubernetes will have its own way of deploying it into hundreds and thousands of servers, let's say hundreds of servers.
Yes,
Or do
yes.
we need Ansible scripts?
No. Kubernetes can take care of, if you have a cluster which is 100 servers, Kubernetes will take care. And anyway, you will deploy your application depending on how many instances you have. It will automatically do the load balancing across the machines. You don't need to do that. So that is Kubernetes' job.
But
you
for
can manage,
containerization of,
yeah.
but to put the containers into these servers, you still need Ansible scripts, right?
You can use
Docker
Ansible,
containers.
but you can use other tools also. Even shell script can do the trick for you, because Docker containers, if you are talking about creating new images, you need Docker file and you need Docker hub, and you can push it through Jenkins, or you can ask Jenkins to invoke Ansible to push. So there are multiple options to handle Docker, whether you're talking about container or an image for that matter, because Docker
We
itself
will only
doesn't
push the
become.
container only, right? Not the images, because you will create your container out of the image and then you will push them to different servers, right?
Yeah, but we will be talking about even creation of an image, because before you can create container, you need to have your image. So that image we will be creating and pushing to Docker hub. I will show you that flow, and after that Kubernetes takes care. You don't start any container or anything. That is the job of Kubernetes to start for you. We don't start any container ourselves, okay? Because that is the responsibility we leave to a
That
container orchestration.
starting will be done by Kubernetes. My only question was whether we deploy the Docker containers using Ansible thing, or that's
No, that
I
is
think there is a
Kubernetes.
suggestion here. If we request Saurabh to basically hold on to your queries, because some of it, when you see what Prashant is going to show us, we'll also address some of these queries, and we have full 15 minutes or more at the end for Q&A. We would love to discuss everything that you want to ask. Okay, just let basically the flow get completed, because I think some of them will get answered as we go ahead.
I just had that on Kubernetes, but I'll hold on to it.
Sure,
Yeah,
thank
sure.
you.
So let's see. Okay, thanks, Adi. Thanks, Saurabh. Okay, so we will be, as I said, Kubernetes setup can be also Kubernetes. There are multiple implementations, or we can implement our own Kubernetes cluster. But considering this era of outsourcing, we really don't want to go there. So we have chosen for this demo today the Google hosted Kubernetes, which is called Google Kubernetes Engine. So we already have an account in Google, which we created. It's a free tier account that we can create if we want to practice. I have already created a cluster there, but we will talk about it, how you can create, and eventually I will show you that how we can host the application, the hello world.war file, Java war file that we have, and we kind of create a Docker image out of it, how we can do so. Rather than doing, delivering a war file as a Java application, we would like that we deliver the container image, or let's say the Docker image, and then whether we start container ourselves manually using Docker commands, or we use Kubernetes to do that. This is the part which we will be showing you today. So at a high level, Kubernetes has a steep learning curve and lot of concepts. So just to set the background, guys, what we will cover today is that we will have a cluster, what is called, there is a master, or what we call a control plane node, and there can be one or more worker nodes. This is the concept of Kubernetes, okay, where you have on the main master node of Kubernetes, which is controlling everything, you have various processes. Considering the time and everything, I will just be letting you know that we will be using a command line use interface called kubectl. It's one of the way that you can invoke API server of Kubernetes master. And what you can do is like we have our Docker container, so we deploy an application. Okay, that is the concept. So basically a deployment gets created. As part of deployment, a replica set gets created, which is another concept of Kubernetes. And based on replica set, let's say if we have said we need 2 instances, okay, of our application, replica set will make sure that exactly 2 pods will come up. And by the way, people do get confused between pod versus container. So just like Docker basic entity is container, the Kubernetes basic entity is pod. And there is normally a one-to-one relation between a pod and a container, but technically speaking, if there is a need, you can have a multi-container pod also. But today's demo, we cover, and the most common scenario is you have a one-to-one mapping. There is a reason why Kubernetes kind of doesn't work at a container level, but more at a pod level. And then there is some kind of a key value etcd pair, which is more like, you know, considering the whole cluster, the status of it. And you have critical piece like controllers, various kind of controllers, whether for deployments and replica. So all these are part of the control plane of which is having its own, but this is all not our problem anymore. If we are hosting GKE, or if we, as part of creation of Kubernetes cluster, master, worker node, all this setup is done. And this is more like the software in place. Okay, just like when we install Windows, we get all the features. So remember, this is not something that as an end user of Kubernetes you need to manage. As an application developer, we will show you what you need to do. You will either use a kubectl way like what we will show you today, and maybe we are planning a second open house where we will try to show you the descriptive way, or what we call using a YAML file and all that. But today we will try to focus mainly on kubectl. And what it does is eventually the scheduler kind of, which is a critical process of master node, kind of invokes your Docker and containers on respective worker nodes considering. So this is more like a pod in action here. Okay, so what that is the whole thing that we will be covering in next 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, at this point of time, where we will be creating a deployment. I will show you replica set gets created, pods will get created, and if required, I will show you the Docker container also. But remember, it is a lot of concepts to grasp if you are seeing Kubernetes for the first time. So coming back to this, after we have created a deployment, this is the next concept of Kubernetes, which we will cover, which is like creating a service. So service is a way to expose your containers or whatever you are running the pods to external world. So for sure, we would like to access our Hello World application that we will be showing you from a external IP. For that, we will use a concept of service. And in that also, there are multiple kind of services that Kubernetes support. What we would be showing you is an external load balancer service, and we will tell you its advantages. There are other services like node port and cluster IP and various other things. But again, as this is not a theoretical session, so the whole demo consists of that we will take our base WAR, which we have created as part of this whole process of CI/CD pipeline of CPD Off program. We will create a Docker image out of it. We will push it to Docker Hub, and then we will invoke Kubernetes to host that rather than using the Docker commands to start containers. That piece of orchestration we will use Kubernetes for. So these are the high level steps in demo that you will see. That we already have a WAR. I will show you how you can package it into a new Docker image, how we can push that image that we have just created with our application to a Docker Hub kind of a registry. And then I will briefly try to show you in general how you can create a Kubernetes cluster on GKE, though it takes few minutes. So in interest of time, I have already created that cluster, but steps are very simple. That is the advantage of a managed solution of GKE that we have taken. Otherwise, setting up Kubernetes cluster is itself a big Herculean task to kind of, and if there are issues there in any of the things, you have to debug them as per the need. And eventually we will show you a deployment of our application. We will create a service, and then some small tricks and pieces of how do you upgrade your deployment, that means create another image and push that with a different, and you see how on the fly Kubernetes is able to handle that, or create a more number of instances as per the load and see more containers coming up or more pods coming up. So slightly we will cover that piece also finally. So with this background, let's start on the first step, okay, which is this flow only, which I was saying. And today we will be covering there is an imperative way and there is a declarative way in general. These are the two popular terms in which are used in the industry for multiple things. Okay, so like what we would be showing you today is an imperative way to handle Kubernetes, because this is something which is very fast and normally would be used by a developer in their day-to-day work. But yes, if you need a repeatable behavior and if you are managing production clusters and all, you may go for a declarative way, which is using YAML or JSON or whatever other format is supported by Kubernetes. You manage those files in your source code management and you can keep on upgrading them just like your source code. But today we will be showing you the imperative way, where we will instruct Kubernetes to do what we want it to do, and it will do this. Okay, so we will first build as a real, this is more these steps which I have shown here in picture. Okay, so you create a Docker file is already there, you push it to Docker Hub, then you will call Kubernetes using kubectl to invoke a deployment, which will invoke a replica set, which will invoke pods on worker nodes, and eventually we create a load balancer service. Okay, so this is more like picture which I wanted to show, and then we will access this through Chrome, the application, the Hello World application that we have created. So now with this background, we will start the first step of creation of an image. Okay, so all this looks very complicated, where you do a concept like building an image and then you push it to Docker Hub. So with this, let me show you how easily we can do it in this. Okay, so let's say I have, okay, let me go to a machine which has already the everything. Okay, so we have all this set up. So let me quickly go to our application. So I have already, this is our application which we build as part of this. It is as simple as I say something like we will use Maven right now. I'm not showing you Jenkins. Remember, all this in a real pipeline gets invoked through a Jenkins job, okay, which is doing the CI. So this is kind of a continuous build. It's not a continuous build, it is build happening. And you have a war file. Eventually with this war file, what you will do is, let me show you how you will create an image of a Docker. Okay, so let's move to this. So I have this war. Okay, so this is the usual way in the past that war were delivered. Okay, but the problem with war is that it needs a Tomcat server, it needs some version of Java, it will have some OS dependency. So we would, rather than delivering a war, we would like to deliver a container, okay, which will be having Java, its own version of Ubuntu, its own version, not full version of Ubuntu, but there is a container which already has a Java, which already has a Tomcat version, and on top of it, we will copy the war. So the Docker file for it is very, very simple. Okay, let me show you. This is one of the simplest Docker file that I can show you. What all it has is just these two commands. Let me show you. It takes a base image, which is something that we have created. It contains, as I said, some base version of Ubuntu, some base version of OS, whatever, and some Java version 1.8, Tomcat version, whatever we have chosen. And only thing it does is it copies this war and creates a new image. So it is as simple as I say Docker build, and I give it a name, whatever name I want to, and say my hello world, whatever. Okay, and I say dot, which means take this Docker file. So basically what will happen is, as part of this, in these simple, with this simple command, okay, Docker build -t, okay, and I say this, and you will see a new image getting created. Let me show you Docker images, and you will have P Beniwal, my hello world, 5 seconds ago. So see, it's as simple as this. And if I want to push this image to hub.docker.com, which is a registry, let me show you. We have, it's all guys free. We of course cover a part of it as part of our DevOps CPD Off program also. But let me quickly show you also that let's see my hello world. Okay, so let me push this image Docker. I have to log in, but this is already done. So I will say Docker push p Beniwal my hello world. Okay, the moment I do this, and let's see, okay, it is pushing this image to hub.docker.com, which is a registry of Docker images. And let's see, I will show you also here. Once it gets pushed, you see updated a few seconds ago. So you have this latest version a few seconds ago. So this is as simple as it. And now remember what all this image contains. This image contains the base OS libraries, the Java version, the Tomcat version, and also my war that I have just built, all built into a new image and pushed to Docker Hub. Now is the point where Kubernetes come into action. Either we can run this through a Docker command by using Docker run and some port. But today we will be showing you how you can use a Kubernetes to invoke this application or this image that we have in our hub. Okay, with this background, we have done this step, okay, where a build has happened, a push has happened. Okay, of course, our image name is different, which is fine. With this, we have to create in general a cluster. Okay, this is creation of a Kubernetes cluster, which means a master node and worker nodes and all those comes into picture. Now this is, as I already explained you, a slightly complex process, but using Google Kubernetes engine, let me show you. This is GCP. I have created a free account. You get it 365 days free and some 23,000 rupees balance. Of course, you need to take a credit card, put it there. It charges 2 rupees and gives you back also. But all said and done, anyway, this is not a cloud session on GCP, but I will quickly show you. If I want to create a new Kubernetes cluster, this is the beauty and the power of a managed solution. I just say create cluster and give this cluster a name, something like whatever I want to give this. Okay, so this is like creation of this whole cluster. I can give it something like demo and just say create. Okay, it is as simple as this. And as part of this, a full 3 nodes of Kubernetes worker node and a master node, all that will get created with just this one click. Of course, it takes few minutes, and that's the reason we just give a name and create. Of course, there are other lot of things that you can do setup. I'm not denying that, but if you want really to practice Kubernetes, it is as simple as giving a name and create. Once you do the create, you will see after few minutes something like this. Okay, so I created a kube cluster. This already has 3 working nodes. Okay, and how to connect to it, there are options through this using Cloud Shell and all. But let's say I have done this step and created create. So now let me show you. The moment you do this, you have a working Kubernetes here. Okay, let me show you a command like kubectl, which is the main command, and I say something like get nodes. Okay, which will get me the nodes of the Kubernetes. Okay, so how many nodes I have? So this is, you see, 3 nodes, 1, 2, 3. These are all connected to this kube cluster. Okay, and I can show you also we have 3 VMs also, which is already there. So all this is already set up. Okay, which is part of the setup of the Kubernetes. So you see we have 3 nodes here. So this is like these are 3 working nodes, and the managed solution of GKE doesn't give us and doesn't even show us the master node, but believe me, it is there, but it is totally being managed by the Google themselves, so they don't expose you to it. The only way to talk to master is using kubectl, which I'm showing you right now. So coming back to our application. Okay, so we have a working Kubernetes cluster with 3 nodes ready just by one click and giving a name. And right now, if I'll show you, it doesn't have anything. Okay, it has only one service, which is the, okay, it already has something. So I was just practicing something. So let me do the cleanup here so that you don't get confused. So I will do the cleanup of the deployment. Clean up this deployment and also the service. Okay, because this is what we will create. Normally I practice it few times before the session, so it's already there, but we will clean it up immediately. That's not a problem. So we will start our flow. So what we have done till now is we have created a Docker image with our war file in it. We have created a cluster, and now comes the step where we would like to deploy our image that we have created. Okay, so let me take this command which is mentioned here. I will just take this command as it is, and let's see. Okay, so and what it will do is kubectl create deploy. Okay, so it is just this. Okay, so let me try to quickly explain you this command. It is kubectl, which is the way I want to create a deployment with the name hello world. The image that I want is P Beniwal. This is the image of the Docker hub that I pushed. Okay, of course, right now I kept a different name just to show you, but this is the image which we create as part of, let's say, our CPD Off program. This is the version 1, and it is on port 8080. Just to informative that this is a Tomcat 8080, and I want 2 pods running of this. Just with this one command, what will happen is this image from Docker hub will get pulled by the Kubernetes for me. Kubernetes will start a deployment. Deployment will have replica set, which will have, because I mentioned 2 replicas, so 2 pods will be created on the respective working nodes. I don't control. This is part of the Kubernetes scheduler and API server and controllers. Okay, all this is being done by the Kubernetes in background. If I want to see all that, let me show you. Get deploy replica set and pods. Okay, so let's see what all we see. So you see there is a deployment created hello world. It is all up and running. You have a replica set. So 2 is desired, 2 is current, 2 is ready, and you have 2 pods running. Okay, now you may ask, where are these running? We can check that also. Get pods -o wide or something will show you. See, one of them is running on the node CW8Z, and the other one is running on KZPH. Okay, let me show you also. These are 2 of the nodes. Okay, let's see. These are the 2 of the worker nodes also. Let's see on the compute engine. We have such names for sure. We will have, otherwise it cannot get. So you see one of them is CW8Z and the other one is KZPH. So right now 2 instances. Automatically Kubernetes has done load balancing. One of the pod is running here, the other pod is running here. And remember what this pod has. This pod has a running container of this image. Now, as I said, we can't access this from external world. Okay, this is something which is a deployment which is running. So as part of deployment, it is all created. But if we want to access it, the final step for this would be that you need to expose this as a service. So for that also, command is very, very straightforward. You just say, I want to expose this developed hello world with a load balancer, and this is the port, and I would like to expose it on the 8080 on port 80. So the moment you do this, let me show you what happens. Okay, all this is the beauty of the hosted solution of GKE or whatever other people you take, the service providers. And let's see if I do this hello world. Okay, so this is to get the service. You will see that very soon this IP will get updated. Okay, because this is external load balancer. The GKE is doing its magic and it will eventually give us an IP, and we will have a working application which even if any of you want to access it right now, you would also be able to access. So this is the real power that you get as part of a hosted solution of Kubernetes, that this will be, of course, you see already this got here. So I have this IP. While I am trying, if any of you would like to also try, don't think it will work just for me also. Okay, this is a public hosted IP. I just say, and I will see this. Okay, this is the application, which is a very small hello world application, which we normally use for our DevOps CPD Off program. So it's hello world ATA and Java project. So we had a batch in September 2020. So normally I keep this date updated. So this is right now, if any of you would try on their Chrome with the internet, working internet, and giving this IP 35.226.23 and this hello world, you will also see exactly this. Okay, of course, in a real world, you will have a DNS entry with a different, because you don't want to remember IP. So you will have a name like www, whatever, my hello world, whatever domain you take from, like, GoDaddy or whatever. But said that, practically Kubernetes has made it so simple that you will have a working application which is containerized and already pushed on Docker Hub. And behind the scene, there is a load balancing happening. Some of your requests may be going to this one IP, the other one may be going to the other IP, but you don't care as an end user. For you, it is exactly the same experience. You just go to your application. So more or less, we have done the piece of creating a deployment, which created a replica set, which created pods, and we have also created a service. Now, just briefly, I will try to, because we would like to leave 15 minutes for question. Quickly, I will try to show you, let's say if your load increases, and if your load increases, you would like, your website is not working up to the mark. So you may like to kind of, let's say, increase the number of instances. Okay, so it is as simple as right now there are 2 instances running. You can just give one command and basically it will increase your replicas to 4. So this is like scaling up. Let me show you how many pods we have now. Okay, if you will check now, you will have 4 pods running, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they are, see, it's further between different machines. One of them here, 2 on this machine, 1 on a different node, 1 on a different node. It is as simple. Of course, there is a auto scaling also, which can be done based on, let's say, if your CPU reaches 80%, so accordingly. But yeah, right now I'm showing you a manual way. You can make it even more, like you make it 5. I said, guys, today we are covering an imperative way, but there is an automation of all this also possible, and you could get into, you have 5 deployments or pods running on whatever machines that you don't care. It is as simple as that. And now the final piece of this demo, which is a usual scenario, right? Our application is not the same all the time, right? So you would like to kind of upgrade your application, which is quite common because normally there is a new release coming. So even that, so all this, if you are doing through Docker yourself, this is very painful, leads lot of commands and all. But with Kubernetes, of course, if you have understood all this and kind of mastered it, what you can do is, let me show you that how you can, let's say we have a new version. Okay, I have already done this. For the new version also, a developer would repeat these steps, or whoever is support, that you make a version 2 of this app or whatever, and you push it to the whatever the thing. Okay, so you have pushed this, it is already there in Docker Hub. So I will not be spending, I already showed you once how to do it. But let's say a new version comes, and after this version has come and be pushed, somebody who is responsible for your, let's say, production kind of a thing or whatever setup would just give this one command, and I will show you that we will just refresh this and you will see the message changing and the background also changing. Okay, that is what I changed in the version 2. So all I have done is given one command that please set the new image to hello world v2. Okay, that's it. So basically I'm saying please update the deployment. The moment I do it, this is called something like a rolling update happens in the background. Some instances go down, some new come up. I will just refresh and you see at the same IP, suddenly I see on open house on Kubernetes October 2020, because this is what I changed, and I changed the background color. Okay, so this was more or less a quick recap of what we wanted to show you, like this flow that we wanted to cover. Let me again show you this pictorial representation where you have all this push happening, you have deployment, you have replica set, and we have today covered imperative way of doing using kubectl. But I said we will be having maybe another open house very soon in this month only, where we will try to show you also a declarative way, which means using YAML files, which is a manifest file for a deployment and a service, and we will invoke that through Jenkins. By the way, imperative commands can also be invoked through Jenkins. That's not a problem, just like you invoke a shell script. But all said and done, with this, I think we will close the demo and we will be opening our questions. And maybe Adi, if you could set some background.
Sure. So I think thank you so much, Prashant. That was wonderful. If you can just quickly show a few slides and talk a little bit about CPD Off, Prashant, go ahead and do that, and we'll just ask questions in the next 5 minutes. Okay.
Okay, guys. So I think that's a good idea. So, guys, CPD Off is a program that we run mostly. Now we have started running every month end, like last weekend of the month. And because of the popular demand, we cover it on Saturday, Sunday. But yes, we have to start because it's a 3-day full day course. It's 100% lab, which means we give you a VM, and from the very first minute, not very first minute, maybe a half an hour, 1 hour, we surely give some context, post which people are spending time on a Ubuntu VM and covering the whole flow of CI/CD that I showed you. Okay, this is a real CI/CD that everybody in the class creates, and then post which there is a certification also in which you need to create these in 2 hours and all that we explain. But the whole thing highlight we would like to say it is that you get a DevOps CPD Off certificate, and we cover full life cycle of DevOps, and we believe that no PPT or no YouTube videos can help. So we basically make people experience. That is the piece that we get all the time feedback, that people like this course very much, because in industry there are so many other courses, I agree, but most of them have more component of theory than the practical, and ours it's always more practical than this. And just a final piece of maybe a testimonial by one of the guy, we may speak listen him for a minute or so. That's it, not too much time we will take, so that we can spend time on taking questions. Maybe Adi, you can take it from here.
I think no need. We can, guys. See, you can talk to anybody who's taken CPD Off. We guarantee that the feedback has been almost 100% there. Request you to talk to any of those guys. And the next program is on 30th October onwards. We'll be giving you some discounted coupons for that. Having said that, the idea was to show you Kubernetes in action. We can actually start asking some questions now. So go ahead, Saurabh, if there is anything remaining and others, you can unmute yourself and start asking questions. We have got exactly 18 minutes and we would try to answer every question that you guys have.
Sure.
Saurabh, you want to ask your remaining questions if there are any? Anybody else?
All?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Quick question. Do we really need to move the image to Docker Hub and then pull from Kubernetes, or can we move the container also?
No, there is no way a container can be moved, because image is something which is static, and pushing that, of course, we may not use Docker Hub as it is, but we need an image repository. But you can have your local image repository hosted, or even all cloud providers also give you image. But yes, Kubernetes will start managing an image and will start its own container. We don't give container to Kubernetes. We give image to Kubernetes. Because container is a running instance, right? So you can't give that to Kubernetes.
I thought that you create the container or a multi-container architecture, and that is what you deploy into your production. So that was my thought process.
See, container and images at time are kind of, people use them interchangeably, which is not correct. But yes, if you ask me, to Kubernetes, you have to give a path to an image, which is the image of a container. I agree. Now, whether you call it an image, because normally in strict terms of Docker, image is a static kind of image that is like a exe or whatever, which is there. And container is a running instance. So Kubernetes cannot manage a running instance which you started from Docker yourself. Okay, it will start the container or the process itself, and then only it can manage. So basically, to Kubernetes, in the Docker term, you have to give an image.
I can also add
quickly
on that.
Yes, Adi.
So when you say Docker run, that run is what? Only Docker run actually uses an image, right? That is where the container is created.
Right.
It uses the image and creates the container out of it, and definitely you can use an existing image and then you can add your own version to it in a Docker file and then kind of do it. So question is, in Kubernetes also there must be something similar to Docker run, right?
That happens automatically. Yeah. So Prashant can actually answer that.
So basically, see guys, when I say this create deploy, okay, so remember behind this deploy, lot of things are happening. And of course, after a point, when a pod will get created after a replica set, that pod internally will have a Docker run command somewhere, but we don't see it. That is the power on the Kubernetes orchestration in action for the container, and we don't see. But yes, a run has to happen for a Docker container to come up. But of course, that run is managed by the Kubernetes processes, whether kubectl or kube API or whatever manages it. All said and done, there are a lot of processes which will come, a scheduler will come in place and everything, and eventually it will get invoked. But yes, we don't see that run, but I can show you that the container is running. Okay, we can see the container running. Let me show you also while we take more questions. If I connect to one of the node, okay, let me show you. Let's connect to this node just to prove my point that container is there. Okay, of course I showed you pod because remember, the basic entity which is visible from Kubernetes is a pod. Beyond that, it is not visible directly from Kubernetes. But said that, eventually there is a container running. If we want to prove that to ourselves, I can surely show you I will connect now to the virtual machine, which is one of the working nodes. Okay, and let me show you the command of something like docker ps grep hello world or something. Okay, let's see, hello world. So you will see you see there is this running. So this is actually there are, yeah, this is the see the name it has given, it is K8s hello world, and this is the name of the replica set and the name of the node and what not. Basically, so a Docker run has happened, but we didn't do it, Kubernetes did it for us.
Okay, and apart from GCP, you can use AWS, right, to create your nodes, or you have to use GCP?
No, you can use any service provider for that matter, but yes, they also have their host. Actually, Azure has Azure Kubernetes AKS or something, I think they call it. And actually,
what I'm saying, if I go into AWS and create a couple of Ubuntu setup, I can still create worker and this thing, right, for Kubernetes?
Yeah, but in that case, GKE will not do that for you. Okay, in that case, you're talking about your
GKE?
own.
Sorry, what is
GKE
GKE?
is Google Kubernetes Engine. This is a managed solution of Google. But yes, if you want to do it in a way that you want to create your own master machine of Kubernetes, and that happens to be on Google, and one of the worker node you would like, so you have to handle the networking piece, how the IP will be accessible and how the ports needs to be opened, and eventually you have to install the software yourself. But yes, you could have, I believe, nodes from other cloud providers also, but that invokes a lot of setting that you have to do. No cloud provider directly will give you a solution for that.
Plus, I can add a little bit here. Yeah. So let me just add quickly. When you try to create your own master node and try to create your own clusters, basically it requires you to have a VM, which is basically going to cost you a lot, because the VM has to have a capability of creating internal VM. Everything is basically based on virtual boxes here. So the way that you have to have is a VM that you create on either GCP or AWS or even Azure has to have the capability of creating an internal virtual box, which is not available on the lightweight low cost VMs. You have to basically go for the high end.
Cannot get you that. Free tier will not
get you.
So
you're saying Ubuntu you can't do. So basically you'll have to use some other service of
no, Ubuntu you can do. Ubuntu service which is available, or Ubuntu VM which is available on either of these three cloud providers or other places. You have to go for a certain level of virtual machine which allows you to create another virtual machine in it.
So the free tier you can't use that.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, Prashant Prajot here. So I'm like from this conversation, right? So for for Kubernetes, as in we don't require to create any VM and stuff, right? So only kube control is enough, right? So whether it be from Windows or Linux machine, right? So
Actually,
no
that's
VM
why
is required to be created on the
I got your question, Prajot. But the thing is, we are using a hosted solution or a managed solution, which is called Google Kubernetes Engine. If you are using this, remember VMs are getting created, but all that Kubernetes engine is creating for you.
Yeah. So
But
we don't
let's
have
say
to do anything explicitly. It would be done by the engine itself.
yeah, but let's say if I don't want to use Google Kubernetes engine, then you have to go and create your own VM like a master. You will create your worker node 1, 2, 3, and then you will install the master software on Kubernetes of here on the nodes machine. You will do these could be CentOS, these could be Ubuntu, these could be maybe Windows, who knows what you want to do. So basically, if you want to make your own cluster, everything is your responsibility. But if you used a managed solution, that is what you pay them for, right? Because they take away all the heavy lifting for you.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I thought we were speaking about managed services, but then yeah.
Managed,
So
you don't need to do anything.
so you had a slide
Prashant,
on the orchestration of the whole Kubernetes thing. Could you go to that side? In fact, I mean, I have posted one question. So there are nodes and there are pods, right? Are those different as such, or like?
Yeah, so if to give you the answer, see, pod is a process which is running. Node is the full worker node. Okay, if you ask me, this is the node. Okay, this is like a virtual machine or a real machine, whatever. Okay, so this is called a node. Pod is a running instance of a, kind of a, maybe a container, if you want to say, but of course it can have more than one container. If, as I showed you, this is a pod. The one, of course, this is not a pod. If you want to see pod, you have to go kubectl. This is a pod. But this is a pod which is running on machine CW8Z. This is also running on CW. So this is the node. This is the pod. So I hope you get the difference between a pod and a node. This is pod.
So I mean, could you go back to the diagram as such?
This diagram?
Yeah. So in this, right, this whole orchestration is called node, and within the node, you are saying there are pods.
Yeah. So this is like a machine worker node. I showed you one
Ah,
picture. Of course, we have three
So
nodes. Okay.
okay.
So we
Okay,
have
so
three.
node is in general the term which we use, right, for
Yeah,
any.
node is the name for VM. Okay. If you
Okay,
ask me in our case, node is the name for VM.
okay, nothing specific to like Kubernetes.
No, no. It's like a machine on which it's working.
Prashant,
Yeah.
you have a background in telecom, and let me ask a non-technical question. Telecom world, what is the kind of adoption we have for the DevOps tool CI/CD? Given that we have these more of the legacy application, the BSS, OSS. So, do you think these can then get into Kubernetes or Docker images can be created? I've not heard about it, but have you heard like all billing or mediation or order management solutions?
Yeah. So my take on it is, guys, like if it's a greenfield project, they have an advantage. So Netflix of the world and maybe Google of the world or LinkedIn of the world have an advantage. But said that, see, why telecom world or any other world for that matter has to come here or will like to come here is because this makes things run faster. In the sense you can deploy, but of course, if your
But do we
applications
have
are
the
very monolith.
solutions?
No, we have actually, see, you have to first break your application. Right now, if it's a brownfield projects, there are a lot of monolith applications and underlying technologies have to be upgraded. Of course, that involves a big cost and a redesign of the whole thing. And eventually, when it's broken down into smaller piece and you reach a level of so-called microservice architecture and make them loosely coupled, so all that investment has to be done. But I am seeing in the telecom world also, the company which I was part of, because the same customer who was earlier okay to get a deployment maybe in 3 months or 6 months now want a weekly deployment. Of course, it can be done with a monolith kind of an application and big bang approach also, but said that companies have started making a move towards, but it's a long-term journey. It's not something that just because you will use Jenkins, you will become DevOps. Okay. Eventually, if your source code is so big and you are not using Git, but you are using something else, and your application takes hours and hours to build, if those problems are there, you have to redesign your application. But of course, that redesign will happen because industry is demanding faster builds or whatever, they want faster things to production. If they don't demand it, I don't think any industry would adopt it, because all these tools needs to be adopted, not just for the sake of it, but yes, underlying software has to be redesigned, which is a big investment. And I have seen companies taking it in parts, okay, where new development at least is happening in this architecture. So you have a side by side where you have DevOps related practices in some part of the functionality, rest is still, and slowly if new development happens, they do away with it and bring it to the microservice architecture. So that movement is surely happening, but it is taking its own time, but demand is there for it to move there, because it's all about time to market, whatever you want to say.
If that happens, I think that's good, because then you can build a image, or as a dev guy, that same can be pushed to QA and into production.
Yeah, so that's what everybody's dream is, but it will take time to reach there. And I see it happening, by the way, okay, where I have seen deployment times coming down from months to weeks by Agile, and now if it is a requirement in days, even Agile is not going to help, because Agile also has 2-3 weeks of cycle, okay, and if you need something like daily or a weekly, you need to invoke some of the tools and practices of DevOps, otherwise it is tough to achieve that.
Now, what is happening, at least in where I have experience, is that we don't build it. We just package the config files, and we have the setup in dev and QA. So the same package gets deployed, and you can't copy the image, but you can just do a package deployment into there, and you have the same, the BSS application in dev and QA, and then you start running it, and that's how you do the orchestration to Jenkins. Still, we have not reached to the continuous delivery part of it. We are still with the continuous integration part.
Yeah, so believe me, a lot of companies struggle more in the CD part than the CI, okay, because CI is more in-house.
CI is something in-house, and it is within your control. CD is where
third party comes into picture and all that, right? So I agree, there is a challenge on the CD piece, but eventually, remember guys, challenge have to be overcome if there is a need. So whatever third party vendors all have to come together, because the end customer would say, I need it, and then they will be forced. So it will come top down, but yes, tools are there to support you, but just tools cannot make you CD.
Because that is where the benefit will come. If the CD comes there, that's where the entire crux of the benefit comes for the CD.
Yeah, I agree, but see, a lot of companies cannot go big bang on it. So I think even if CI is possible, like earlier, it was a lot of builds were failing because of people's mistake, and tools start catching the code review or the unit testing. I think it's a win-win over a point of time, and it's a journey. It's never that you will reach there. Even when you do CD, you will need to constantly improve. So I don't think it's a ever-ending journey.
Okay, I need to drop. Quick question about the course fee and the timings.
Yeah, that I think Harsh will send the details to all the people who have registered, so it will be there. Okay. So for the next batch.
In the 3 days course, I know 3 days is just too short to even do something. But you would be going through Git and then Jenkins and then Ansible and Kubernetes, right? That's the
no, Kubernetes not too much in details. These are the tools which surely we experience. Kubernetes mostly we are not able to, because if we do finish well in time, maybe we show you a demo of Kubernetes, which I've showed you, but not that we make, because we are not working on GKE there. We have our own VM on a private cloud, which is all the way till Docker, it is there.
Yeah, and plus we have monitoring solution built into that as well.
Yeah, Nagios, right? So yeah, that part is not here because this was a CD pipeline. Yeah.
Other thing that, Saurabh, there is another thing that we have noticed is that although we say that it is 3 days, this is the most fast track way of picking up any DevOps pipeline, because other programs, if you see, they advertise over multiple days, but the coverage may be as low as what we have. So if somebody wants to pick up CPD Off or DevOps pipeline practical way, this is the fastest way, and it's a completely hands-on, very intensive program. Plus, we give you the virtual machine for a week's time to practice before you take the exam. So the learnings are immense. Talk to somebody who has already taken the program. Maybe somebody is there in the group here. So I don't know if somebody has taken CPD Off. Is there somebody who has already taken CPD Off in the group right now?
Yeah. Prajot, who was talking, had taken the last.
Yeah. Okay. Prajot, you can share your experience before. But the intent is not to sell ourselves. We want you to talk also. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, course-wise it was pretty good. I mean, it was hands-on and stuff. And the certification as well is pretty. If you are hands-on, then it is pretty easy to clear. In fact, with good marks. Yeah, but then I think basic knowledge of Linux and things are required. I'm like Prashant does give use details about the basic knowledge of Linux as well. But then yeah, it is really good if you have the knowledge of some Linux or not. Other than that, yeah, the end-to-end coverage of CI/CD pipelines and Ansible, Docker is done. Kubernetes, I think it is not covered much, but yeah, end-to-end. Yeah, if we want to know how exactly CI/CD should be, then this course is pretty much what you should take on.
Yeah. Thanks, Prajot. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay,
Good.
guys,
I think
we're done on time.
yeah. I think we are on time. It is 8:01. Anybody for the last question? Otherwise, we can wrap it up, and we will like to thank everybody as always. Prashant, thank you so much for answering all the questions, and it was an amazing open house again. Anybody else, or we will just wind up now?
Would you be sharing this presentation?
Yes, we will be sharing the presentation slides like last time, and we will also be sharing the video recording.
And I think we will have another one, right? We will try to show the ML way, right? The
yes. So within 2 weeks, we have another DevOps open house, which is part 2 of this, which is where we will, and in fact, Prashant will show the YAML way of basically deploying things directly on Kubernetes. I think
and
that would be
through Jenkins also.
Invoking through Jenkins as well. So that would basically give you the end-to-end picture. So don't miss that action on part 2. So we were calling this particular action part 1 and action part 2 in another 2 weeks, guys. So hang on there. We request you to be part of that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Because thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll now stop recording as well. Thank you so much. Yeah. Bye.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Okay. Thank you.